So welcome to the favoured representational system. The favoured representational system. Now, the best way to actually explain this is to demonstrate it. So learning your own FRS is very, very easy to do. You've just got to go through the questions that are on the PDF. Once you understand your own FRS, then you can actually start to communicate it better to other people. So the FRS is also known as the learning language. This is the way we learn. This is our preferred way to learn so that we can absorb the information easily and effortlessly and without much energy. It's like something just clicks inside you and you just get it. When you don't get it, that means that the teachings, the learnings, the upgrade was in the language that is just not your favored language, so that you were kind of struggling with the explanation or something along those lines. So start by answering the questions in the PDF for yourself. If you don't have the PDF downloaded, then please go and do that now. It is in this module. Print it off and answer all of the questions that are available. For each of the statements, you will label from 1 to 4, okay? So there will be a question, and then there will be 4 statements under that question. Label them from 1 to 4. So 1 is not really me. Number 2 is this is sometimes me. Number 3, this is the next best closest to me. And number 4, this is the closest or definitely me. So go and do that now. Pause this video, go and do that now, and then move on to the next step. So once you have done that, you now take each one of the answers and put them into the next part of the PDF, okay? So for example, question number 1 is, when at the beach, the first thing that makes me feel good inside is, and the 4 statements are the roaring waves and the sands, the feel of the cool sand and the warm sun, the scenery, the beach makes sense to go to on a day like that, and it's cost effective. So as you can see from my answer, number 4 for me was the feel of the cool sand and the warm sun. Number 3 for me was the roaring waves and the sounds. Number 2 for me was the scenery. And number 1 for me was the beach makes sense. Now what I'm going to do is I'm now going to take all of these answers and place them in the next lot on the PDF. So my first answer, number 3, goes next to the letter A. So see, you've got the number 1 there. That's the first question. So it goes to the 3. Then my 4 goes in the next one. Then the 2 goes into the next one. And then the 1 goes into the next part. Now, you don't need to understand this section just yet. Just go through and fill that out for each question and statement. And once you've done that, come back to this video. So pause now, go and do that, and then come back. So from here, what we can now do is we can add it all up. So as you can see on the screen, I have all of the V's circled. So as I go through, I can add it all up. So I've got 4 and 2, which makes 6. Then I've got a 3, which makes 9. Now I've got a 1, so I'm on 10 now. Now I've got a 3, so that's 13. Now I've got another 3, which is 16. I've got a 1, which is 17. I've got a 4, which is 21. A bit slow there off the mark. Now I've got a 3, which is 24. And now I've got a 4, which is 28. So add all those together. So add all the V's together, all the A's together, all the K's together, and all the AD's together. So go and do that now. Now you have found out your favored representational system. So if you were V, it's you learn better by visual comparison. If it's an A, you learn better by audio. If it's K, it's better for you to be kinesthetic. And if it was an AD, it's auditory digital. Let me explain each one of these 4 languages. So visual. When you are a visual learner, you stand or sit with your eyes or your head up usually. And usually you want to see what's going on. You really want to see it all. You breathe with the top part of your lungs, and it's usually rapid and slowly. You tend to sit forward in the chair, and you like things to be a bit orderly. Even if it's a chaos, you still have some kind of order to it. You memorize by watching. You learn by watching, and you aren't distracted by noises. Once you become focused on what you're doing, you are focused. You are learning, and this is what you're doing. You can have trouble remembering verbal instructions. So things like, oh, go down the street, turn left, now turn right, and then when you get to the tree, go left, blah, blah, blah. You actually can have some difficulty with that. So the mind can also wander, also with people who drag on with their conversations. Visuals are also interested in how an idea looks. So they're interested in the presentation of it. For visual people, appearances, displays, and presentations are very important, and it does matter. So, some of the visual predicates, now these are words that people use for visuals. So some of the words that they'll actually be expressing will be see. Now you can notice that one's in bold because that's their biggest one. Then they've got look, view, appear, show, dawn, reveal, envision, illuminate, imagine, clear, foggy, focused, hazy, crystal, or picture. You'll notice that these people use these kind of words when they're explaining things to you because they're trying to teach you about their model of the world, their learning language, and you're working out that they're a visual person. I remember the first time I learnt this, and my best friend was audio. So what she could do is she could type on her phone and still have a conversation with me. And that would frustrate the crap out of me because I couldn't do that, because every time I'd start typing, I'd get distracted and then I couldn't work out what I was typing. And that's because I'm a visual learner. So I actually need to integrate that. And then all of a sudden, I wasn't getting frustrated at her anymore because she's audio. She can absolutely take in that information and type at the same time. So she has this double binding learning language. Absolutely fantastic. And when she's learning stuff that she's interested in, she's very interested in jumbo jets and aeroplanes. And she knows by the sound what kind of aeroplane that actual aeroplane is. And she can tell you the number and everything like that because she's audio. She hears the sound of the plane, she learns what it is, and then she knows. So this is the visual words are actually much different to the audio words. So if you get a client in your free consult and they're using a lot of visual words, so like, see, just look at me. Look at the way I am. Does this look like a 30-year-old woman to you? Then chances are they're a visual learner. You can pick up on their language. So some visual patterns, okay? So these are some of the things that you can do for the visual client or for the client who'll be doing to you. So some of the speech patterns for visual people are very quick and grouped. That's why when I'm teaching people, I have to learn to slow down because I am a visual learner. Some of the processing patterns are very, very quick with visual learners. They just have a quick look and they're like, yep, got it. And off they'll go and they'll try it out. So they do need very, very minimal detail, and a lot of them learn by failing better than what they learn by succeeding. The decisions and triggers that they go through are very abstract and they can become big. So when they're making a decision, all of a sudden they're like, yep, it's going to be done, and it's going to be done right now. The actions that these people do is they take advantage of opportunity. They'll see something and then they'll just go for it. They'll hone in on it. The tonality to use with visual people is slightly fast and upbeat. If the client is in the room and they're looking through your packages for sale or things like that and they have energy, then you use a slightly fast and upbeat tone. If they don't have the energy, you just use a slightly fast tone and then they'll start to resonate with you. So maybe you were audio. Audio learners tend to move their eyes sideways when networking with their mind. So they'll prick up the ears. They breathe with the middle of the chest. They typically talk to themselves. So they'll actually talk to themselves. They'll give themselves instructions. They'll be like, so if I go left just here, I know that I will get to the right place. They're easily distracted by noise as well. So you could be having a conversation with them and then all of a sudden somebody else will yell in the background or something like that and they will get distracted like that. Like, oh, what's going on over there? And that's because they're audio. They're continuously learning about their environment around them by their ears. So they're easily distracted by noise. They can easily repeat back what was said. So you can say, no, I didn't say that. And they'll go, yes, you said exactly this, because they're audio and they picked up on all the words. They usually have pretty good memories about steps and procedures, or they can remember key moments in a flash to trigger your memory. They like to be told how they are doing as well. They're very much words of affirmation people, and they like to be told how they're going. And they will always be interested in your program by how it sounds. If it sounds like a good, valuable program, then they will buy it. So here are some of the predicates that audio people will use. They'll actually hear, so they'll tilt their head. They'll listen. They'll say, "You're not listening to me. You must listen. Listen to the sound of the universe." They'll use sounds. They'll make music. So they'll sing, they'll hum, they'll talk inside their heads. They harmonize. They tune in, they tune in and they tune out. So you can be talking, and all of a sudden they're like, "What did you say?" And that's because they're audio. They'll be all ears when they're actually listening. They're like, "Yes, yes, yes, tell me more." They like the silence. They like to be heard. They can resonate with other audio sounds that we don't even get. They sometimes like the deafness and the quiet. They usually question, and they can be ignoring people as well. So they can ignore you and just not take in the information. And they also get distracted by noises usually quite easily, especially loud noises. So some of the audio patterns are, these people, when they're talking, they'll actually do a lot of ums, maybe they'll talk like that. And that's the reason is because they're trying to take the information from their brain and make it into an audio sound. So they're taking the pictures from their mind and trying to make it into an audio. They'll let you know what their responses are by an idiometer response. So they'll usually nod their head. Or they'll, yes. They'll give you responses physically. When they're making decisions and triggers, usually they speculate a little bit because they haven't quite got the right sound to it. They're like, "No, it doesn't quite sound right." And then they'll take chances. With these people, they're usually taking advantage of opportunity as well. If something sounds right, if something ticks all the boxes, they are good to go. So when you're talking to these people, use a slightly fast and upbeat tonality. It's very similar to visual, and make sure you use a lot of auditory words. So you can hear how this can really help you. So use your auditory words. If you're kinesthetic, here we go. Usually you breathe with the bottom of your lungs and the stomach will come in and out. Most kinesthetic people can move and talk very slowly, so they will just kind of drag on a little and they will pronounce their words properly. They respond to physical words and may even touch you. So there's a lot of kinesthetic people out there that they'll actually touch you whilst they're talking, or they want to reach out and they want to shake your hand, or they'll put their hand on your shoulder, or they'll even touch themselves. So they'll start doing this. They'll run their fingers through their hair, because they're kinesthetic learners. Kinesthetic people also tend to stand in close proximity, so they might be really close and personal with you, and you're just like, stand back a little bit. And kinesthetic people will only engage in a program or purchase if it feels right. So it's got to feel right to them. The price feels right, the way that the item feels, like in the texture base, is right. That they got to go with their gut instincts as well. So if it feels right deep down in their core, then that's their gut instinct. Like, yeah, that feels right. So here are some of the predicates for the kinesthetic people. They feel. They're very, very indulged people, like a smallest sadness in the movie, and they will be a crying mess because they have really associated themselves with it. They like to touch things and grasp things. They'll say words like, "Hold on, hang on to that. Oh, you slipped through. Catch it. Tap into this." They'll also say words like, "Let's just make contact and throw it out there." They'll turn around. They'll say something's hard. They're numb. They're like, "It's a concrete situation. There is no way around this argument. Oh, I just scraped through with the tiniest of measures, and I tried to get a handle of it," sort of thing. Or they'll stand there and go, "Yeah, that's a solid piece of information." That's a kinesthetic learner. So some of the kinesthetic patterns are, they will deliberately phrase things. So they're always using examples, and they always use long phrases as well. So they'll go, "Yeah, that's a rock solid answer. Yes, it's very concrete with the data," rather than saying just yes, because a visual person will just go yes. Their processing patterns is to explain in a lot of detail, and that leads into the decisions and triggers. So they start with this fundamental stuff like, so what are you doing on Saturday? And then they get into the more specifics because they're trying to tap into the feelings. Their actions are to study the criteria and to make plans. And when you've come across a kinesthetic person, use a considerate and thoughtful tone just above the monotone. Yes, I completely understand. I can feel you. Oh, yes, absolutely. So use that monotone tone when you've got these clients in your room, and if they're in their free consult when they're not quite sure if they want to buy a package, make sure that you use that monotone with them. I completely understand how you feel. Feel is the key word there. How you feel. You're connecting with them, and that'll lead them to go, you know what, this is going to work. I can feel it deep inside that this is where I need to be, so I'm going to do it. So perhaps you are auditory digital. Here's an eye-opener for you. This is the unnatural learning language that I spoke about at the start. So there's 3 natural, which is visual, audio, and kinesthetic. And the 4th one is an unnatural one. So the auditory digital, I'll explain more about in a moment. Don't freak out. You're not an idiot, okay? So auditory digital spends a fair time talking to themselves because they're trying to constantly, they're in their own heads, trying to analyze, trying to work it out, make it perfect. They know steps, they know procedures, they know sequences. They know what it is that they want to do, but they don't have the knowledge of actually doing it. Okay, these people are usually interested in buying a program if it makes sense or if it's at the right price. So auditory digital predicates are usually making logical sense. Like, yeah, that's logical. Yeah, that makes sense. They're usually cost effective as well. Yeah, that's good money. That's good value for money. They'll compute stuff, so they'll constantly like trying to analyze it inside their heads. And they'll understand, and they'll think, and then think, and think, and think, and think, and think, and think. And then they learn and learn and learn and learn and learn and process, decide, consider, change. They'll perceive. Sometimes they come across as insensitive because they're like, well, the facts are this, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, it doesn't matter what the facts are. I'm feeling a little bit neglected right now. And they're like, yeah, but the facts are this. This will bypass in 12 days, blah, 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 blah. So they've gone into that auditory digital. So they'll become very distinct and conceive. They know everything, even though they may not know everything. They like to explain and reason as well. So auditory digital patterns, when it comes to their speech patterns, they're usually long and analytical. They're complex sentence. They'll usually use a lot of big words when you're just like, hang on, why didn't you just use this word? It means the same thing. They're usually also correcting themselves, trying to be correct. Their processing patterns won't give you any understanding unless you ask. So you're like, so do you understand? And they'll be like, yep. So unless you ask them, they won't give you clarification that they understand what's going on. They just assume that all the information is correct. Their decisions and triggers are usually they're investing in themselves, but they also speculate the information because they want all the facts, they want the data, they want all of the information. Some of the actions that they do is they will study the criteria, they will plan the criteria, they'll research the criteria over and over and over and over again. So the tonality to use in this one is actually the exact same as kinesthetic, because this person is actually in an unnatural learning state, so you need to be able to connect with them. So use that monotone. Oh, I understand the facts, absolutely. Yes, those facts are very true. So make sure you use that monotone with them. Make sure it's considerate and thoughtful towards their facts, their data, and their needs. So once you know your own FRS, you can now find out other people's FRS, and they don't have to go through and answer all of those questions, okay? They will actually use their own words of their language. So once you find a person's FRS, you can then use the correct words for their language to communicate better with them. So for example, if you come across a kinesthetic person, you will respond better during the session with thoughtful tone and a heartfelt script. So when you take them through the script, you can say to them, imagine, pretend that you're in a forest, and they'll go, there's no forest. But then you'll say, but you can feel deep inside that there's an energy inside you. And they will totally relate better to that than imagining, pretending that they're in the forest. So that's why you should say, just feel the breeze on your skin, feel the sun on your face, because you're starting to talk their kinesthetic language. When your client presents for the initial consult, actively listen and watch for their learning language. So you're listening for the words that they're saying and you're watching their physiology for their language. Because if they're an audio person, they'll use that physiology. If they're a visual person, they'll just keep looking around because they're trying to suss out their environment. If they're a kinesthetic person, you'll probably find them, they'll be touching the seat and things like that. Or maybe they're touching the table. Maybe they want a tissue that they're not actually going to use. So this way you can actually adapt your tone and your session work to resonate with them. And they'll be sitting there going, oh, you totally know me. You totally just get me. And you can also use this in your emails, your phone calls, and your writing. So if you're doing a text message or perhaps a blog to someone or a letter or something along those lines, you can use those languages to actually help that person make sure that you understand them. So you're tapping into their favored representational system. A person that is auditory digital is training themselves to be like this. It's an unnatural learning state. And it's usually come from society or a stigma that's been placed around them. They have picked up an identity somewhere, and that's because it usually becomes from where they were raised. So perhaps they had a parent that was a very visual parent, and they were kinesthetic, and the visual parent kept telling them all of the things they were doing wrong, kept telling them they were stupid, they were dumb, they just don't get it, all that sort of stuff. So they've actually started to make themselves auditory digital because they're just trying to fit in. They're just trying to work it out. So visual, audio, and kinesthetic, V, A, and K, are all natural learning states. Everybody has a preferred one. Sometimes we do all go into the AD state, so the auditory digital, and that's just because we're trying to learn that system. But that doesn't mean it's our preferred state. It's usually one that we go into and it takes all of our energy and we just do it because we have to. And this is where when you go into work and you're doing these systems because you have to, you become very audio digital, but then when you get home, you completely flip your personality. So AD people have shifted out of their natural state and into one they have trained themselves to be in for various reasons, okay? So many AD people will come to you because they're at the end of their tether or they feel like they've lost themselves. They don't know who they are anymore. And that's because they've shifted themselves into this AD. They're like, oh, it's so confusing. I don't know what's going on. One day it's this, the next day it's that. I don't understand what that person's trying to tell me. Why does that person hate me so much? So when you get an AD client, speak the AD client's language until you can break it down to find their natural language. Okay, so some AD clients, when it comes to the AD language, is because they haven't actually connected with themselves in so long that even they don't know how it is that they learn. So speak the AD language with that monotone until they start to break out of it, because the subconscious will come through at some stage. It may be something as simple as, I understand the facts, and they'll go, yes, the facts. And then all of a sudden, you've got a trigger that perhaps they're audio. So then you can use some audio words whilst you're talking to them and see if they respond. If they start responding, you know that their learning language is audio. If they don't respond, you've eliminated one language and you're now down to visual and kinesthetic. So you have to actually experiment with that person until you can nail that learning language that they prefer. They're going to have to bring that out in themselves. And some people, they just don't want to connect with themselves anymore, especially if they're kinesthetic people, because they've been hurt so many times. So you might find that this person's natural language is what they actually are struggling with, and they were trained by an external environment that their natural language is just wrong. There's a lot of kinesthetic people out there that actually get brought down, especially by visual people, because visual are very strong-natured, they're quick learners, they're fast to take on information and fast to engage, where kinesthetic tend to wear their heart in their sleeve, they're going with their emotions, and they just don't understand what it is that's so wrong. And then they start taking it personal, and they're like, oh, what's something wrong with me? No, there's nothing wrong with them. It's just that that person wasn't talking their language, that's all. So there are many visual learners in society, and they're quick to pull down kinesthetic learners and audio as well. So they can actually degrade them without knowing that they are doing it. And then they can lead the kinesthetic learner to change to an AD state because the kinesthetic learner just wants to fit in. That's all they want to do. They want to be one of the cool kids or one of the achievers or something like that because they're trying to fit in. So many people have miscommunication due to the person communicating in their language rather than the language of the recipient that's trying to learn. That's why when we're in school classes and stuff like that, people fall behind because the actual teacher has their own learning language and they're not willing to adapt outside that. So when I do my teachings in here, I make sure that I do a video for all of the visual learners. I then do a PDF for all of the audio learners because the audio learners are people that read stuff. As much as you may think reading something is a visual tool, it's not. It's actually an audio because whilst they're reading that, they're talking to themselves as they're reading it, and that's what's going over inside their head. So when they're reading something, that's actually an audio learning program. Okay, so that's why I have those things. And then I have the Facebook page for the kinesthetic learners so that they can ask questions and we can all network. A lot of people who are visual probably won't engage in the Facebook page because they've already worked it out from the video, and they'll download the PDF, but they probably won't read it because at the end of the day, they're just like, I've already learned it from the video. So I have to make sure I cover all three bases when it comes to the FRS for you guys. So AD people will also explain a lot of experiences that they have in their life from a disassociated state. So because they're struggling to connect with their own learning language. So if you get an AD client that's in for the free consult and you'll say something like, so how are you affected like this? Like, oh, well, like you're just sort of there and you're doing your thing, and they'll disassociate themselves from the event because they haven't actually connected to their own learning language. And unfortunately, this can lead to depression and anxiety. They can feel like an outcast because they're not connecting with their own identities and they're not opening up to learning anymore. They're just going with the flow because they've had enough. So, here's a key one for you. You are all of these languages at various times, but you do have a favored one, okay? Because, hey, even I go AD sometimes because I have to learn that system. Sometimes I'm visual, but there's only audio material available, so I have to read that book as much as I'm not real keen on the idea, sort of thing. So you're all of these languages at various times, but you do have a favored one. That one where when you do it, you're like, oh, is there a video or a book? I'll just watch the video. So you do have a favored one because this takes less energy. You know that you'll get more out of it and you'll feel good. So your favored FRS will actually help you to learn much, much easier. It also helps you update old information and eliminate old information much easier. And it also makes you have a warranted decision about what it is that you're doing. So if it ticks the box of your FRS, then you know it's the right decision to make and you'll go with it. So I've included more predicates. They are available in that PDF download because there are some statements that people use. So please just go ahead and have a look at that PDF. The FRS is great for sales pitches and has been actually even referenced to people with the language of psychics and mentalists. There are heaps of people out there that when I actually start to do the FRS with them, like they don't know that I'm doing it now because I've practiced it so much. And when I start doing that with them, they're like, oh, Trish, are you psychic? Trish, do you know the future? No, I don't. It's just that I've learnt the FRS, I've mastered it now, and I can actually network people and change myself to go into their structure of reality. So once you master the FRS, you can become a chameleon in the room. So you can mold into each environment effortlessly because you can mold in with people. You can speak their right language and then you can start to network with them a lot better. You can get that rapport and prestige much easier. So here are some things to note. People change their learning languages, okay? So you may actually get somebody in your room who is, say, an audio learner, but because they are struggling to hear because they're deaf or something like that, they've had to switch to visual. And this takes so much energy out of them. They don't want to learn anymore. They can't be bothered. So you have to make sure that when you're actually working with your client, that some people have actually changed their languages because of things that are going on. So if you get a kinesthetic learner and maybe they've changed to visual, it's because their feelings have been hurt so much and, their teacher doesn't talk to them properly or something like that. Okay. You will find also that a lot of kinesthetic learners will actually delve better into NLP techniques than hypnosis ones, because hypnosis is very visual, is very audio, and kinesthetic people respond better to NLP. Adapt as the person shifts, okay? Because you may have somebody that comes in with the wrong learning language because they've taught themselves to be like that, and they will actually shift as your program comes along. They'll find their old selves again. That's what you're looking for. The new self that's brought the old self through with better learnings. So that's what you're looking for. And adapt as that person shifts. Maybe that person has had a really shitty day and they're coming in an AD learning state. So they're coming in an AD state. They've sat down. They're like, look, the fact is this and then this and this and this and this and this. Speak that language until they calm down. Use your pace leading, calm them down, and then bring them back into their natural state. Okay, so adapt so that the person can actually make the shift. And practice, practice, practice. Learn your own FRS first, which you should have done from the questions. Listen to your own words, okay? So when you're actually speaking and stuff like that, listen to your own words and pick yourself up. Confirm that you are visual, that you are audio, that you are kinesthetic. Confirm which one you are. Then start listening to the words of your family and friends. Work them out. Don't go and diagnose them. Don't say, oh, that's because you're an audio learner. They don't care. It's as simple as that. So take this information and start to learn about those people and then use those words to actually create better rapport with them. If you have somebody in your family that you kind of struggle with because they frustrate you or something like that, stop for a few moments, listen to their learning language, work it out, and then start using some of their learning language words to see if you can create that better prestige and rapport. So experiment with people, start networking and start using it, okay? So go out there, practice, 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 and you find your sales will go up, you will have better rapport with people, and your prestige will just explode. Otherwise than that, have an awesome day, everybody. I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.